Halfway through Can't Help Falling in Love. Elvis froze. Just beyond the stage lights, an elderly woman in the front row slumped forward. The band kept playing. The crowd didn't breathe. And then he moved. If you believe moments of kindness can change an entire night, stay with me. Because what Elvis did next became a story this city still tells decades later. The first notes rang out like clockwork. Clear, steady, perfect. Elvis stood center stage in a white jumpsuit trimmed with turquoise stones, a soft blue scarf resting on his shoulders. The heat in the arena was thick, the kind that sticks to your skin. Fans fanned themselves with folded programs. The smell of popcorn and cologne drifted in waves. Flashbulbs sparked from every angle, each one freezing him mid-gesture. The hum of amplifiers filled the brief spaces between chords. He was halfway through the verse when movement caught his eye down front, just left of center. An elderly woman's head tipped forward, as if she'd fallen asleep, but then her hands went slack. A thin, clear oxygen line slipped from behind her ear, glinting under the spotlights. The man beside her tried to lift her upright. Ushers appeared almost instantly, their dark jackets cutting through the sea of seated fans. 2 rows back, someone waved both arms high, calling for help. The band kept playing, unaware, but Elvis stopped singing. One hand went up, sharp, certain. The musicians trailed off, leaving a heavy, unfamiliar silence in the air. He stepped forward, leaning out over the lip of the stage, the toe of his boot almost hanging over. From where he stood, the woman's face was pale, her lips parted. You could hear the shuffle of feet as more ushers pushed down the aisle. The chatter died. Thousands of fans now watched, not a performance but a crisis. According to people in the 3rd and 4th rows, Elvis crouched low, one knee to the stage, squinting into the shadows to see her more clearly. The glare from the lights made him blink, but he didn't look away. The medics were still a good 20 seconds away. In a venue this size, that felt like forever. Elvis's jaw tightened, like he'd already made a choice. Some say you could see it in his eyes. He wasn't about to let her disappear into the crowd unseen. As the first medic knelt beside her chair, Elvis glanced over his shoulder toward the side stage, then back to her. He straightened, took one slow step back toward the mic, and beat. His next words would change the course of the night. Elvis didn't wait for the medics to lead her away. He leaned toward his mic, voice steady but low enough to hush the arena. Bring her here. The crowd froze. You could hear the scrape of a folding chair leg somewhere in the back. The only other sound was the slow, uneven rhythm of her breathing. 2 security men in matching navy blazers stepped forward, nodding to the medics. They didn't lift her out of sight. They lifted the entire seat, careful not to jostle her. From the stage, Elvis watched every step they took, hands clasped in front of him. As they reached the platform edge, he crouched again, extending one arm. Under the harsh white spotlight, the scene looked almost too fragile to be happening in front of 15,000 people. He took her hand. Hey, honey, you with me? Witnesses recall her eyelids fluttering. Her lips moved but no sound came out. That's it, he said softly, giving her fingers a light squeeze. The audience, still holding its breath, began to lean forward as one, the way a single wave moves toward shore. Someone in the upper tier called out, "We love you, Elvis," but it was met with a ripple of quiet chaff from every direction. An usher passed up a paper cup of water. Elvis took it, held it for her. He gestured to a stagehand in the wings, then removed his own blue scarf and began fanning her gently. The fabric caught the light, flashing streaks of turquoise with every motion. Instead of resuming the concert, he turned toward the band and gave a small, circling motion with his hand. The musicians understood. It wasn't time for the next song. The electric whine of the amps dimmed. A single guitar began to pick a slow descending pattern, almost like a lullaby. Elvis stepped to the mic and hummed, not lyrics, just a low, soothing melody. It filled the arena like warm air, curling up into the rafters. Her eyes opened wider now, the corners of her mouth lifted, just enough to register. Elvis smiled back, a quick, private thing before turning to the crowd. "She's all right," he said, and a soft cheer rolled through the seats, restrained but full of relief. She leaned closer and whispered something. No one nearby caught the words, but whatever she said made Elvis straighten suddenly. His gaze swept across the stage, searching the shadows beyond the curtains. He nodded once, sharply. From the far side of the stage, a crew member began moving toward them, carrying something Elvis had apparently requested. The crowd, sensing something new was about to happen, shifted in their seats, camera flashes sparking again. Elvis helped her to her feet, steadying her with one arm. He looked down at her, then back at the audience, and said, "Let's do this together." A folding chair appeared from the wings, legs scraping faintly against the wood. Elvis took it, set it center stage, and guided her down gently. "You okay to sit here with me?" he asked. She nodded, still holding his hand. The crowd was silent, except for the soft click of camera shutters and the low hum from the stage monitors. Stage lights washed them both in a pale gold glow, dust motes swirling in the beams. Somewhere in the distance, a fan stifled a sob. Witnesses in the first row remember Elvis leaning in. "You know this one?" he asked, tilting the mic toward her. She managed the smallest smile and whispered, "Yes." Elvis turned to the band, holding up 2 fingers, a quick, universal cue. The drummer laid his sticks across the snare, resting them. A guitarist began to strum the opening chords to "Love Me Tender," slow and bare, like a lullaby meant for one person. He shifted the mic stand between them so she wouldn't have to lean. When the verse came, Elvis sang the first line, then he angled the mic her way. Her voice, thin but clear, floated into the still air. Just one line, a little shaky, but enough to make the crowd exhale in unison. The applause started small, almost polite, then swelled like a tide rushing the shore. People in the balconies stood down front. Strangers clasped hands. Elvis grinned, not the stage smile but the kind that crinkles the eyes. Instead of taking the mic back immediately, he sang the next line with her, their voices overlapping. He kept his gaze on her, not the audience, and for that moment it felt like the rest of the world was watching something they weren't supposed to see. Something private, offered anyway. As they reached the chorus, he slipped the blue scarf from around his neck and draped it over her shoulders. The fringe brushed her arm. She gripped it like it was a lifeline. Flashbulbs lit up the arena again, each pop capturing another heartbeat of the scene. The song wound down, the final note hanging in the air longer than the sound itself. Elvis reached for her hand again, holding it between both of his. He leaned close, his mouth near her ear, and spoke words no one else could hear. Her hand flew to her mouth, eyes wide. She shook her head once, as if to say, "I couldn't possibly." Elvis chuckled quietly, giving a tiny nod that said, "Yes, you could." The audience watched like they were trying to read lips. Whatever had just been said, they knew it wasn't part of the show they'd paid for. Elvis stood, still holding her hand, and called toward the wings, "Bring him out." From the shadows, a man in a dark suit emerged. Elvis, his manager, carrying a small notepad and pen. Elvis guided the elderly woman toward him, still on stage, still in full view of the crowd. According to those close to the family, this wasn't a quick, "Are you okay?" moment. Elvis was making arrangements. Right there, under the lights. "She's gonna have the best seat in the house. Every time I'm in town," Elvis told the manager, his voice low but caught faintly by the mic. He pointed toward the front row, then back to her, making the promise official. The crowd responded with a cheer that rolled like thunder around the arena. She looked down at the sea of faces, then back to Elvis, her expression caught between disbelief and gratitude. Security approached to escort her backstage for rest. Elvis didn't let her go right away. He held both her hands, thumbs brushing lightly over her knuckles. "You've been my star tonight," he said. She smiled fully now, the color returning to her cheek. The audience, sensing the moment was ending, erupted again in applause, not just for the music, but for the man who had stopped the show for one person. As she was led toward the wings, Elvis stepped back to the mic. The band kicked in with the next song, a bright, up-tempo number, but his voice caught on the first chorus. He closed his eyes, pressed a hand to his chest, and let the crowd sing the rest. No one in the arena that night could know that this wasn't the end of the story, that the words he'd just spoken, "best seat in the house," were more than a one-night kindness. Photographs from that concert would later show the exact moment. Elvis looking at her like he was seeing the only person in the room, the blue scarf still around her shoulders. Those photos ended up framed in homes far from Tennessee. By the time the last song ended, most people thought she'd simply go home with a story to tell. But Elvis was already thinking about what he could send her that would make the promise unshakable. 7 days later, a knock came at her front door, and what she found on the other side proved he meant every word. A week after the concert, the sound of knuckles on wood echoed through her small front porch. Her daughter opened the door first, and on the step sat a large flat package, wrapped in brown paper, and a smaller padded envelope. Both bore the return address of Graceland. Family members recall her sitting in her armchair, blue scarf draped over her lap, as they carefully unwrapped the larger box. Inside, under a layer of tissue paper, was a framed photograph, Elvis and her side by side at center stage, his hand in hers, the arena's lights blazing behind them. The smaller envelope held 2 laminated cards, each stamped in gold. Front row, lifetime access. Tucked between them was a folded note, the paper thick and slightly creased. In Elvis' familiar handwriting, it read, "You'll always have a seat in the front row, Elvis." Her daughter said she read it twice before looking up, her eyes glassy. She pressed the note to her chest. "He meant it," she whispered. "He really meant it." That frame took a permanent place on the wall above her television. The passes, still in their original envelope, were tucked neatly into the back of the frame, for safekeeping. And every time Elvis came through town, she was there, front row, blue scarf around her shoulders. According to neighbors, she treated the passes not as a possession, but as a trust. If she couldn't attend, she sent a family member in her place, instructing them to sit tall, so he sees you. The story made the local papers, with the photo taking up nearly half a page. Radio stations retold it on air. Fans who hadn't been at that concert passed it along like a piece of living folklore, proof that even in the largest arenas, Elvis saw the individual. In the years that followed, that frame gathered the faint scent of her home, fresh coffee in the morning, lavender in the afternoons. The gold lettering on the passes dulled slightly with time, but the ink on Elvis's note stayed as bold as the day it was written. When she passed, her family kept the frame exactly as it had been. They say it wasn't just a reminder of a concert, it was a reminder that true greatness isn't measured by the size of the stage, but by the willingness to stop the music when someone needs you. And so decades later, the photograph still speaks, not just to those who knew her, but to anyone who believes kindness can ripple through a crowd of thousands. Today, that photograph still exists. The edges of the frame are a little worn, the gold on the lifetime passes faint with age, but the blue scarf in the picture is as vivid as ever. Her family kept the passes in the same envelope Elvis sent, never using them again after her last concert. They said it wasn't about the access anymore, it was about the promise behind it. The framed photo now hangs in her granddaughter's living room, a few blocks from where the original arena once stood. Visitors notice it immediately. They ask about the scarf, about the man holding her hand, and every time, the story is told the same way. He saw her. Out of everyone in that crowd, he saw her. The arena is gone now, replaced by a modern stadium. The exact seat she once held, front row, is only a spot in the dirt. But the memory of that night lives in the retelling, passed from family to neighbors, to fans who never met her at all. Because kindness like that doesn't fade, it lingers, in photographs, in handwritten notes,
in the hearts of everyone who hears about it. True greatness isn't just about the voice or the record sold. It's about stopping mid-song because one person needs you. If this story moved you, share it with someone who believes kindness can stop a room. Tell them about the night Elvis stopped the music for one fan and made sure she was never just a face in the crowd again. What's the most touching moment you've ever witnessed at a live show? Share it below. Your story might inspire someone else.